Alright, this is Job 27 in the MacArthur Study Bible in the Endearing Word Commentary. Okay, so a little refresher from 26. Basically, Job answers Bildad and pretty much saying, how have you helped me with your words? And, whose spirit came from you? Pretty much saying that your words and the other friend's words really haven't helped anybody, let alone Job. Yep, and then he talks about the greatness of God's power, like hanging the earth on nothing and drawing a circular horizon on the face of the waters. Pretty much science verifies this with the earth rotating on its axis, basically being hung from nothing, and then the circular horizon, the earth basically being round. Alright, and then at the end of that chapter he actually asks the question, but the power of his thunder who can understand? So he ends that chapter with the question, but there's going to be no answer. So that'll set up the first verse in Job 27. Alright, so the first section of Job 27, Job boldly declares that he will maintain his integrity. The first 6 verses, Job's commitment to the truth. Alright, so the first verse, moreover, Job continued his discourse and said, with no response from the friends, as God lives, who has taken away my justice, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter, as long as breath is in me, and the breath of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. Far be it from me that I should say that you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. Okay. Alright. So, MacArthur says that Job turned from speaking about God in chapter 26 to defending his righteousness. Alright, and then Endearing Word says, talking about verse 1, moreover, Job continued his discourse. So it seems that Job waited for his friends to reply. Because he ended with a question in chapter 26. It was, after all, Zophar's turn, but they were silent, either out of weariness or frustration with Job, so Job continued. And Mason says, it's not that they lost the debate, rather what they lost was all patience with Job. They had just given up on Job as a bad job. From now on, their only argument would just be the argument of silence, of throwing up their hands in disgust. What can you do with the man who is so pig-headed and so incorrigible? I guess in their minds, there's really nothing more we can say to this guy. I mean, we tried to get him to listen to reason, but apparently he just doesn't want to, so what else can we say? I guess nothing. So he'll just continue on, and we're just not going to say anything, because what's the point? He ain't going to listen. Alright. So, verse 2, as God lives, who has taken away my justice, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter. Alright, and MacArthur says, when it talks about Job saying, God has taken away my justice, God did not speak to declare Job innocent. The treatment of Christ in Isaiah 53:8 and Acts 8:33. This is some cross-references. I may take a look at Isaiah 53 real quick, verse 8. Isaiah 53 verse 8. Let me see. Still going. Almost there. Yeah, verse 8. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the living, for the transgressions of my people he was stricken. So the servant, the suffering servant, obviously Jesus in Isaiah 53, according to MacArthur, the servant lost his life to be the substitute object of wrath in the place of Jews, who by that substitution will receive salvation and the righteousness of God imputed to them. Yeah. And of course none of us are innocent before God because we're sinners, but it's only through the sacrifice of Christ that would make us innocent and righteous before God. And even that sacrifice would apply to saints in the Old Testament like Job. So of course, justice doesn't ultimately fall on Job, but that doesn't mean that he's innocent of sin. Of course not. I mean, he even said, if I have sin, then show me. Yeah, but it's only through faith that he stands righteous before God, that he's actually innocent, before God, ultimately due to the coming sacrifice of Christ. Yeah, that's what makes him righteous before God. Yep, and Job knows that he's righteous. Yeah, but he's not saying that he's sinless. Yeah, he knows that he's righteous before God. He has faith in God, and so he's going to hold on to that, regardless of what the friends have been saying about him being wicked. He knows that he's not wicked. He doesn't live wickedly. Yeah, he walks with God. He worships God. He obeys God. Yep. So therefore, how could he be, wicked? Yeah, as the friends were saying. Yep. Yeah, now apart from having faith in God, he definitely would be wicked. Yep, and God would have said so, but God said he's righteous, so there you go. Yep. And ultimately it's through Christ that happens. And by faith. And Job already, whether he realized it or not, he was actually pointing to Christ even in some of the previous chapters, talking about having a mediator or an advocate, or knowing that his Redeemer lives. I mean, whether he realized it, he was talking about Jesus. So, and really he actually had, faith in Jesus, really. Yeah. So, I mean, knowing that eventually he would be vindicated by God. Yep. So, alright. So, back to endearing word. In the previous chapter, Job praised the power of God, but he also recognized that he needed something more than the might of God. He needed rescue from the one who made his soul bitter. Alright. Yeah, that's at the end of verse 2. Alright, and Anderson says, Job has already appealed to God many times. Now by swearing by the life of God, he uses the stronger measure possible for forcing God's hand. And then Mason says the juxtaposition is jarringly ironic. Even as Job confesses his faith in the living God, his matter of factly accuses God of deserting him and leaving him in the lurch. Yeah, Job does not say as I live, but as God lives, even though this God has hidden his face and denied him justice. Yeah. Now, justice basically in the sense of pretty much making everything right for Job to finally be vindicated from these false accusations of the friends, and maybe all of this suffering put to bed. Yeah, just having everything be made right, and hopefully there's a mediator that could plead his case, even though he actually became confident that he actually could stand before God and it would actually go well. So, anyway. And Smick says he felt God had denied him justice, but inconsistently still knew that God somehow was just, so he could swear by his life. And the same incongruity applies also to his earlier fantasies with his highly emotional words. He viewed God as his enemy. And Spurgeon preached a sermon on this text called A Vexed Soul Comforted, speaking to the child of God who felt that God had made their soul bitter. And here's what Spurgeon said in that sermon. Child of God, are you vexed and embittered in soul? Then bravely accept the trial as coming from your Father, and say, the cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? It's just what Job said in chapter 2 when his wife told him to curse God and die. Press on through the cloud which now lowers directly in your pathway, and may be with you as it was with the disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration. They feared as they entered the cloud, yet in the cloud they saw their Master's glory, and found it good to be there. And maybe the glory of God could come from the trial that you face. So maybe you just need to, embrace it. And as James says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. And Spurgeon goes on to say, if it be the Almighty who has troubled us, surely he can also comfort us. He that is strong to sink is also strong enough to save. If he be almighty to the embitter, if he be almighty to embitter, he must be almighty to sweeten. Oh yes, that word almighty cuts both ways. It makes us tremble, and so it kills our pride, but it also makes us hope, and so it slays our despair. Alright, well said, Prince of Preachers. Alright, and then Job goes on, as long as my breath is in me and the breath of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongues utter deceit. Yeah, that was verses 3 and 4. So Job affirmed his true and steadfast devotion to righteous living no matter what happened. He refused to live with a guilty conscience. That's verse 6. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. And there was no brash... Now this was no brash claim because God recognized Job's virtue. Yeah, God said that Job is a righteous man. So what Job is saying here is not wrong, because even God agrees and says that Job is righteous. By faith, yeah, but it's ultimately by faith. Yeah, it's not of Job's doing, it's of God. Alright, and that was from MacArthur. Alright, and then endearing word, going back to verse 4. Yeah, my lips will not speak wickedness. So in his bold and plain-spoken manner to this point, one might think that Job had spoken wickedness before God and his friends. Yet Job did not think that he had, and he insisted that he would not. Now Trapp says, he complaineth of God's severity, but stormeth not against him. He blustereth, but he blasphemeth not. So yeah, he may have complained and felt like God was against him, and that God is, it just doesn't seem fair that God is allowing this. But he did not ultimately speak against God, as the devil thought that he was going to whenever all this stuff happened. Alright, yeah. And he was just pouring out his honest feelings and his agony. But he ultimately did not curse God. He did not blaspheme God, even in his complaining. Alright. And then he says in verse 5, "Far be it from me that I should say you are right. Till I die, I will not put my integrity far from me." So when Job protested that he would not speak wickedness, he meant it in the context of saying that he would not agree that his friends were right in their accusations against him. So if he actually agreed with his friends, then he would actually be speaking wickedly and his tongue would be uttering deceit. So it's in that context. Okay. Alright. Verses 7 through 10. This is the vain hope of the hypocrite. Alright. May my enemy be like the wicked, and he who rises up against me like the unrighteous. For what is the hope of the hypocrite? That he may gain much if God takes away though he may gain much if God takes away his life. Will God hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call on God? Alright. So MacArthur says that Job could have been calling for God to judge his accusers as he judges the wicked. So that's verse 7. Yeah, may my enemy be like the wicked, and he who rises up against me like the unrighteous. I guess basically, may God, judge the ones who rise up against Job like he judges the wicked. So sounds like he's saying in a way that may God judge his friends for what they said to him. Yeah. Anyway, that's what it sounds like, but I'll see what Endearing Word says. So here, Job, in rather strong terms, he's asking for the same punishment his friends think he deserves to be put on their own heads because of their false accusations. And Anderson says, in Israelite law, the penalty for malicious prosecution of the innocent was the punishment attached to the crime wrongly charged. So hence Job's repudiation of the charges with the oath. Let my hater be treated as the wicked person he untruthfully says that I am. So what they say I am and what I deserve, basically let that come on their own heads as punishment for saying those things about me. Alright. And then Job says in verse 8, for what is the hope of the hypocrite? Though he may gain much if God takes away his life. And Job was accused by his friends of being a hypocrite, of clinging to hidden sin instead of confessing and repenting. Now Job here actually agreed that the hope of the hypocrite was vain, but of course that did not fit him, because he was not a hypocrite. Alright, and then MacArthur says that Job reminded his friends that he would never be hypocritical because he understood the consequences of being a hypocrite. Yep. And these are some of the things that Job says about a hypocrite. Will God hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? No. Will he delight himself in the Almighty? No. Will he always call on God? No. But maybe in times of trouble. Alright, and Endearing Word says that Job was in a difficult situation before his friends. He agreed that God did not hear the cry of the hypocrite, but he had to endure his own season of silence from God. And Job could comfort himself in the understanding that he did, in fact, call on God as a hypocrite would not. Yeah, and a sure sign of a hypocrite, according to Poole, is that he will not always call on God. He may by his afflictions be driven to prayer, but if God doeth not speedily answer him, he falls into despair and neglect of God and of prayer, whereas I constantly continue in prayer, notwithstanding the grievousness and the long continuance of my calamities. Yeah, a hypocrite is not going to go on praying to God if it doesn't work out. Yeah, he only goes to God whenever he hopes that his issues will get solved, and when they don't, he's going to stop calling on God. Yeah, and in times when it's good, he's not calling on God at all. Yeah, so anyway. Alright, and then the second section, Job agrees that God will judge the wicked. So this is verses 11 and 12. I will teach you about the hand of God. What is with the Almighty I will not conceal. Surely all of you have seen it. Why then do you behave with complete nonsense? Yeah, that's actually a short rebuke of Job's friends here. Alright, and then MacArthur says, I will teach you about the hand of God. Job had pinpointed the issue between him and his friends. They disagreed on the outworking of God's retribution. Now, they agreed that God was powerful, wise, and sovereign. But because Job knew there was no cherished sin in his life that would bring upon him such intense suffering, Job was forced to conclude that the simplistic notion that all suffering comes from sin and that all righteousness is rewarded was wrong. And at the outset, Job himself probably believed, as the Comforter still did, but he had seen that his friend's limitation of God's action was drastically in need of revision. In fact, it was nonsense. So Job's comments here introduced his exposition on wisdom, which follows in chapter 28. Alright, so basically he's correcting his friends here. Alright, so Enduring Word says, Job was deeply frustrated at the lack of understanding from his friends. They knew certain principles about God and his way in the world, but they misapplied those principles to Job's situation, of course. And Smick basically says this, Job was saying, must I teach you about God's power to punish? Indeed, I could never conceal from you a subject on which you have expounded at great length. And then he ends with this question in verse 12. Surely you've all seen it. Why then do you behave with complete nonsense? So Job's friends claimed to know God and his ways, and yet they analyzed Job's crisis in a nonsensical way. And Morgan says, summoning all the strength of his faith, he declared that he would teach his opponents concerning the hand of God, and he now practically took hold of all of that they said about God's visitation on the wicked and hurled it back at them as anathema. Yeah, pretty much what you guys were saying is garbage. Yeah, I mean, surely you guys, know what God does with the wicked. Surely you've seen it, so why were you speaking with such nonsense? Alright, and then Job actually talks about what happens to the wicked. Alright, in the final verses of this chapter, in 13 through 23, so the portion of the wicked man. So this is the portion of a wicked man with God, and the heritage of oppressors received from the Almighty. If his children are multiplied, it's for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. Those who survive him shall be buried in death, and their widows shall not weep, though he heaps up like silver dust, and piles up like clay, He may pile it up, but the just will wear it, and the innocent will divide the silver. And he builds his house like a moth, like a booth which a watchman makes. The rich man will lie down, but but not be gathered up. He opens his eyes, and he is no more. The terrors overtake him like a flood. A tempest steals him away in the night, and the east wind carries him away, and he's gone. It sweeps him out of his place. It hurls against him and does not spare. He flees desperately from its power, and men shall clap their hands at him and shall hiss him out of his place. All right. And MacArthur says that Job wanted to make it clear that he was not denying that the wicked are punished with severe distress. So he agreed that they suffered greatly and affirmed so in this section. Yeah, so they all agree that God does punish the wicked. Yes. Yeah, but Job, is wondering, why is the wicked prospering? Like in chapter 21. Seems like they usually prosper more than suffer. But eventually they will be punished. So, yeah, hopefully sooner than later. That would be nice, but eventually they will get punished. Alright. So, Endearing Word says, in this section, Job argued as strongly as any of the three friends, that judgment awaits the wicked man and that he will not be ultimately blessed. Yes, this was an important argument for Job to make in front of his friends, because they accused him of overturning God's moral order in the world. And Job insists that he agreed in general with the ideas that the wickedness is rewarded with judgment from God. Yeah. Yep, this is the portion of the wicked man from God, and the heritage of the oppressors received from the Almighty. Yeah, getting judgment. And Anderson says, hence his prediction of the judgment on the godless is not a belated conversion to his friend's point of view. Since Job nowhere denies the justice of God, it is not inconsistent for him to affirm it here. The disagreement between Job and his friends is not whether God is just or not. It's over how the justice of God is seen to work out in particular events, and specifically in Job's experiences. So, it's the disagreement on, how justice is carried out. Yeah. And if justice is really happening in Job's life or not. If Job is being punished for wickedness or not. So that's the issue going on. That's been going on with Job and his friends. So, yeah, they say, yeah, he is being punished for sin, but Job is like, no, I know I'm righteous before God, but it just doesn't make any sense why this is happening to me. It just seems like God is against me. And I just want to be vindicated. Alright. And then, verse 14, if his children are multiplied, it's for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. Terrors overtake him like a flood, the east wind carries him away. And then that last verse, men will clap their hands at him, and he shall hiss out of his place. And shall hiss him out of his place. Sorry. All right. And it also says in verse 18 that the wicked man builds his house like a moth, like a booth which the watchman makes. And MacArthur says that these are temporary dwellings which illustrate that the wicked man will not live long. Yeah, now sometimes the wicked do live long. So, yeah, but eventually the wicked will be destroyed. So, however long that may be, eventually it will happen. All right. Now, this description of the bitter portion of the wicked includes many aspects that applied to Job in his own crisis. Basically, if his children are multiplied, it's for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. And this is back to enduring word, by the way. Yep, and then terrors overtake him like a flood. The east wind carries him away. Men shall clap their hands at him and hiss him out from his place. Now, this should not be taken as an admission of guilt. Instead, Job's idea was, I know that my situation looks like the judgment of God on the wicked, yet I assure you that it is not. So yeah, this looks like I'm being judged for wickedness, but it's not. But that's not the case. That's really what he's saying. Alright, and Trapp says, God shall kick him off the stage of the world, and the men shall clap and hiss at him in a sign of destitution. And MacArthur says that men clapping their hands, it's actually a gesture of mocking. So, pretty much mocking the wicked man when he ultimately gets judged. Yeah, and Job was, being reproached by people all around him, but again, this is not that doesn't mean that Job is being judged. Alright, and Clark finishes this off. And it seems it was an ancient method to clap the hands against and hiss a man from any public office who had acted improperly in it. The populace in European countries expressed their approbation of public characters who have not pleased them in the same manner present today by hisses and groans and the alike. Alright, but ultimately that's how the chapter ends. It ends by Job saying that, the wicked will ultimately be destroyed, and in the next chapter, Job is going to talk about wisdom. And Lord willing, I'll get to that next time, but until then, may the grace of God bless you, and the mercy and grace won by Jesus, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.